So when I worked at American Capital, I was a junior guy on the deal team. I had done a couple years in investment banking, and then I did what everyone else did. I went to the buy side. So now I'm working at private equity, right? So I get to go out and buy companies and invest in them and grow them and sell them, and it was all cool, right? I was in my early 20s at the time. I joined American Capital, and my job was to basically be the front-end screener for deals, among other things. So I would get required to reach out to guys like you and say, hey, do you want to sell your company? We're super cool. And I got materials from investment bankers. So I'm reading these SIMs all the time, these confidential info memos on just ridiculous shit, right? A company that trucks satellites. This company makes aphrodisiacs for dogs. It was all sorts of stuff I was looking at. And I had to think about what could we, again, American Capital was an opportunistic acquirer. So I look at a company that does, I use pneumatic valves because we made an investment in a company called Pneumatics, and they were a pneumatic valve manufacturer. And, when you look at that, you have to say, okay, what am I able to buy this business for? Like, what do I need to pay today to get this business? What sort of add-on acquisitions are available? So if I have to pay, 10 times EBITDA to buy this business, can I go out and buy a bunch of additional companies at 5 times EBITDA and kind of blend down my entry multiple, right? So one way of doing it was through consolidation. Another way is like, what other capabilities did we at American Capital have that I could apply to this business? So what did I know about strategy in this space? What sort of marketing capabilities do we have? Was this company doing online marketing? I mean, I don't know how many pneumatic valves were sold online. And again, this was back in 2000, 2001. But, do we have marketing capabilities that we could apply to it? What did the board actually look like? Did we have proper governance? What incentive structures are in place at the company? I mean, so we've got ownership, but no one under ownership actually had any real incentives. There was no equity option plans. There was no profit sharing. There were no phantom stock. There's a million different ways you can do incentive plans, but the company had none. So how could we take some equity, pool it, and then provide some incentives for key leadership there? The other question is, is this a 100% buyout? Is this a controlled buyout? Is the owner somebody we actually want to partner with? Like, is the owner somebody who can really help us grow this business? Or is this some guy we want to boot? Could we find an operating partner? Was there some sort of samurai of pneumatic valves out there who had been carving up the world doing crazy shit with pneumatic valves that we could pull in from the outside and bring them into this business to help us grow it? Somebody that had the secret sauce that we don't have. We would look at the strategy, and again, it's almost ridiculous when I think about it. Here I was like a 24-year-old kid, like trying to think about like the strategy of a pneumatic valve manufacturer. But quite frankly, that's actually what's going on now to a great extent in private equity. When you receive that email from a buy-side broker or some analyst at a private equity fund, they've decided that they want to get into the sheet metal industry. And they're looking at a bunch of different companies, and an analyst is saying, well, what can we do with this corrugated roofing and sheet siding and so on and so forth? And they're putting together a thesis, and they're reaching out to companies to see if they can find any. And in the next part of this series, we're really going to get into deal structuring. And that's where I'm going to talk about how deals are structured, how you can protect yourself when you get those emails from private equity firms, and how you should deal with it. But staying on the topic today, again, my job at American Capital was to make that kind of first assessment. Once we found opportunities that we thought were interesting, then I had to write an investment committee memo. And so the investment committee memo was, how much do I think I could buy the business for? What do we think that we can do with it over the next 5 years? So what are all the different value levers that we could pull in this organization? What would it likely be worth 5 years from now? And then what would be our implied return rates, right? So if you think about deal structuring and you think about economics and private equity firms, although they talk about multiples, what they're really looking at is internal rates of return on investment. And I don't want to get too complicated and complex in today's discussion. I think I will do a lot more videos on valuation in the future. But really, when a private equity firm is looking at your business, so you're a business owner and a private equity firm comes in and wants to buy you, what the question that they're asking themselves in the background, what they're modeling is, how much do I have to pay today for a business that's going to be worth X in 5 years based on all the things that I can do with it. So they're going to say all the different value levers that they can pull to help grow this business and create value. It's going to be worth $100 million 5 years from now. So what can I afford to pay for it now, today, assuming that I need a minimum required or internal rate of return of 30%, right? I need a 5-year IRR of 30% or a 5-year IRR of 25% or whatever the hurdle rate is that the firm or the investment committee wants for that particular investment. That's how they're valuing your business. Now, of course, they're looking across the industry and they're looking at, whatever industry you're in the fire protection industry, they're looking at what the multiples are across the board in the industry, what other private equity firms are paying for transactions. You're looking at comparable transaction statistics, so on and so forth. But the key overarching, when I would write my investment committee memos, of course, the investment committee wants to know what the EBITDA and revenue multiples are in the industry. But what they're really concerned about is my projections, how accurate they may be, the levers that we can really pull, and then the implied internal rates of return on the capital we're investing in those businesses. So if private equity has reached out to you, feel free to reach out to me. You can contact me on the contact form below in the description, as well as you can always reach me on LinkedIn. I'm Paul Giannamore. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you on the next one.